So, we're here to talk about your film, Bolt from the Blue, which is having its world premiere at the Austin Film Festival. Um, I guess I just want to start with talking about what you're looking forward to while you're in Austin at the festival.
Oh man. Number one thing, of course, is barbecue.
Barbecue.
Uh,
Heck yeah.
yeah, I'm stoked for that. And I want to hit up Rainy Street because I had hit that up a couple of years back. Funny enough, for Kevin and Paige, who play Lucas and Mia, they're the leads. They're also my brother and my sister-in-law.
Hmm.
And so the first time I was in Austin was probably 2 months before we were shooting the movie. They did a joint bachelorette party in Austin, which was
Oh.
amazing. So I'm excited about that. But I think the number one thing, honestly, is just being surrounded by thousands of fellow filmmakers, storytellers, and screenwriters. That's probably the most exciting thing. The fact that this film and the world premiere is literally being shown to and shared with essentially my peers. So
Mm.
yeah.
That's very cool, and I'm excited for you and the film with its premiere there, and of course your whole Austin experience that comes with it. So that'll be great for you. Um, I before we talk about the film, I really want to hear more about your career because you have a very interesting filmmaking career that spans across short films and big budget productions, and now this directorial debut. Yeah, give us a brief overview of what your career in filmmaking has been like.
Oh man. I have the classic story where I've been making movies since I was 8 years old. It was the one aspect of my life where I felt like I had control, but also freedom, to kind of be who I wanted and explore the world through my own eyes. And then I went to USC for 4 years out here in Los Angeles. And then for the last 10 years since graduating, I've just bounced around a bunch. I was a director's assistant on a Netflix movie in Cleveland for a couple months. I was PA on a bunch of different shoots from Burger King and Target commercials to big blockbusters like Godzilla versus Kong, The Lion King, Fargo season three. Um, and then I worked at a trailer house for a couple months, and I worked for a podcast for 6 months. I've driven for Uber and Lyft for various windows, and I've bounced around a bunch, basically just picking up a bunch of different skill sets and tools to widen my perspective on how movies get made. And I very much feel like I understand the whole process from beginning to end. This is in many ways kind of my first bout with publicity to a
Mm.
certain extent. But aside from that, I'd say I feel like a lot of filmmakers I know, whether they go to film school or not, because you don't really need it to a certain extent, they just want to like rush out and make a movie. And my thought is, if you know exactly the story you need to tell, and you understand your voice and what you uniquely have to say, more power to you. Go out and do it. Raise the money where you can and make it. For me, I feel like I needed the quote unquote grad school of working on these different films, not to like in many ways, I think also a lot of people want to like rush to like get to know the director really, really well. And for me, like the greatest joy of working on Godzilla versus Kong was actually getting to know every other crew member and all their positions and what they do. Not only from their job, but also like outside of their job. Like who are they as people? Because I think once you connect with them on a personal basis, you can lead them in a better way. That's also kind of compassionate and empathetic to their challenges personally and then also professionally. So like Leanne Emmert, who was the location supervisor for Godzilla versus Kong. She did The Dark Knight Rises. She did Lincoln for Spielberg. She did Transformers 3 for Michael Bay. And hearing how she spoke about working with different directors, but then also seeing how she had to get all these military size locations in Hawaii for Godzilla versus Kong, but she had to come in at her $1.5 million budget. She's like, right now we're at 2.7, so we got to figure out where to trim. Hearing that problem on such a huge scale, I was like, oh, okay. So when I make my movie, it's not 280 or it's not 2.8 million. it's $2,800, something like that. So it's just about scaling it down, but it's kind of the same problems.
This is so cool to listen to because in many ways, I mean, I'm not a filmmaker, but I really enjoy these conversations with filmmakers, with actors, with behind the scenes crew, because it's, at least in my contributions to the industry, it really helps craft my perspective on film a little bit better. These aren't just, movies aren't just passive experiences that I like or didn't like. It's now like, oh wow, look at how much talent needed to go into this movie, and look at how much work had to go into this film, and I only know that because I talk with filmmakers like yourself and hear about your stories, and so I very much appreciate that you're doing a similar thing for your career, especially now as you venture into feature filmmaking.
Yeah,
um
appreciate it.
yeah, just a little bit more on your career because I went back and watched some of your shorts. And it's so interesting how many genres you play with in your storytelling, from sci-fi to fantasy, thriller, comedy, action, like really just the gamut of genre. Tell me more about crafting stories around genre, how you approach that, and maybe what your favorite genre is to play in.
Oh man, that's actually a really good question. Funny enough, I guess I didn't even fully realize it, but I have bounced around a bunch. I think I started leaning into sci-fi a little bit more, and funny enough, I even consider my works like light sci-fi. Um, I think genre is just like a fun, vehicle to play in. It's kind of like a sandbox, and you get to play in that sandbox. But I think at the same time, I don't like rules. I like to break them constantly, and that's a challenge with this movie. For instance, it's a sci-fi comedy adventure film. Is it more sci-fi? Is it more comedy? Is it big enough to be considered an adventure? At its heart, it's an adventure. There's a bit of romance in it too. There's all these different elements, which is kind of hard to communicate. But at the same time, I think for me, writing and storytelling is catharsis. It's a way for me to process a bunch of different emotions or challenges that I'm going through in my life. And I'm not just one thing. I'm not just a goofball. And I'm not just somebody who likes to jump out and take on any adventure as it comes. Like I'm all these different facets. And so yeah, I think, on the outside, you have to figure out your genre, you have to figure out your tone. There are certain movies, of course, like Parasite that like flip halfway, but that also takes an immense amount of just nuance and talent and skill set that hopefully one day I could eventually have. But no, for me, I think probably the number one genre that I like to base everything in is comedy, I think. I think that's one of my strengths. I think it's a great way to connect with an audience. I believe if an audience can laugh with a character, they can cry with a character. And I also, like on a daily basis, I try to find as many opportunities to either make myself laugh or somebody else laugh because, laughter is the best medicine. We're all just essentially in one giant divine comedy. That's just what life is. And once we realize that we're in a comedy, we can live life in a better way. So yeah, I'm always trying to look for the jokes. In many ways, this movie I had to pull back on some jokes because I was like, no, wait, this is too much of a heartfelt moment,
Yeah.
and I had to kill some darlings. But yeah, I'd say comedy, and then probably second genre is actually adventure. Like my dream is to one day be able to make sweeping adventure films. Action is like fast cuts and craziness. Adventure is like just seeing the camera just sweeping across and doing some amazing logistical things that kind of takes you on a ride. But I need more resources, of course, to do some of the more intense stuff that I'd like to do. So yeah, in time.
In time, you'll get there for sure.
Yeah.
And also thank you for the reminder that it's about time for me to rewatch Parasite. That's a really
Yeah,
great movie
it's
that plays a
incredible.
lot with genre. But yeah, anyway, so you were talking a little bit about the genre of Bolt from the Blue. Let's jump into that film. For those who are just discovering the film or maybe attending Austin Film Festival and want to know a little bit more about it, can you give a synopsis on what Bolt from the Blue is about?
Yeah, I like to go with the simply put log line, which is just It's basically about a guy up in Alaska trying to catch lightning and harness its energy to save the world from climate change. So it's a sci-fi comedy adventure in the realm of like Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, a little bit of Twister, and it has a bit of homage to those kind of 80s and 90s movies that I grew up watching.
Very cool. This definitely has that adventure sense to it, and I think that a lot of that has to do with where the movie takes place, which is Alaska. I have never been, but what an advertisement for for visiting Alaska. What
Yeah.
made you choose that as the location for this film?
Yeah, so funny enough, the root of it stems from my producer, Mike, who's actually from Homer, Alaska. It's a small 5,000 person town, I think 4 hours outside of Anchorage, which is their biggest city, which has 290,000 people. So kind of puts into perspective how remote Alaska is. And I had actually never been there, but prior to our location scout, when I went, I was like, well, if you want to escape society, like this is where you go. It really is that remote. It is the final frontier, as they say. You can just get the sense that there's a lot of gorgeous uncharted land, and unclaimed land in Alaska. But this idea actually stemmed from a short film idea I had 10 years prior that I wrote around Colorado. That's where the original Lightning Valley was. And then when my producer was like, "Hey, we could shoot up in Alaska," I was like, "That genuinely, it sounds like an adventure." And since we shot this in the second year of COVID, it was kind of our selling point to a lot of our cast and crew is saying like, "Hey, we're gonna fly you up for 3 to 4 weeks to kind of go on this ride with us and kind of escape your apartments." So yeah, it very much, when we were starting to shoot the film, I wanted to try to embrace Alaska as much as possible and make it a character as much as possible. And funny enough, even when we were editing the movie and we were getting feedback, a lot of people were like, "More Alaska, more of those shots, please." So yeah.
Absolutely. And it very beautiful cinematography of Alaska. Like I said, this movie is a fantastic advertisement, maybe to folks in Texas who want to go as far north as possible.
Yeah.
um, so you had mentioned that you get to work with your brother and sister-in-law in this movie. Not only do you get to work with them, you actually get to direct them as they are the lead actors here. Tell me what that was like.
Well, funny enough, I had always written the characters for them. Especially, with my brother, we have 30 years of shared taste in movies and shared comedic sensibilities that I kind of knew exactly who the character was going to be just from the outset. And then, with him being such a absurd kind of heightened person, I needed somebody who was going to ground, the whole story, and as well be contrast to Lucas. And so with writing Mia for Paige, in many ways, like that's kind of who she is. She's this Southern girl who grew up or was born in Texas, grew up in Oklahoma. So she's got this like Southern Midwestern charm about her, but like a strong, firm backbone, but a kind heart. And in many ways, she's the grounding force to our family once she married in. And yeah, and so then directing them, I mean, in many ways, I'm the youngest of three boys, and my brother Kevin is the oldest. So for the first time in my life, I kind of got to be the leader, and he was following suit with what I wanted. But what was amazing is then I kind of came back, and we were in line in the sense that it's a collaboration. Lucas is this character between us that we're both kind of finding and exploring together. And so that was honestly just a great thrill. In many ways, it felt like we were, kids again, running around in our backyard with a bunch of props and toys that we found in our basement to, make up some sort of story from our imagination. So that was, a great thrill. And then Paige as Mia was almost like a one take wonder all the time. After one take, I'd be like, I guess we'll get a second one, just for safety. But like that was it. She nailed it, and she was an absolute natural. A lot of what you watch is very much just her on the first take, which is incredible.
That's really cool. I'm happy to hear that it was so easy to work together in such a collaboration with everyone. Um you had mentioned earlier that there is a catharsis to this storytelling and processing things in your own life. And I was thinking about these two characters who definitely have these very interesting internal conflicts. And so when you said that, it made me wonder how much of yourself do you see embodied in these characters? I mean, both Lucas and Mia.
Uh, Honestly, Lucas is like the child in me. Lucas is the kid who, at a very young age wanted to make movies and tell stories and inspire people for an hour and a half, 2 hours of their day to just kind of escape reality and believe in something bigger than themselves. And then Mia is kind of more the adult me, the one who has to be a little bit more practical, who, navigating basically being an adult through her 20s and my 20s. You go through so much change, an incredible amount of change as you're trying to grow up and figure out who you are, and also kind of for the first time kind of being confronted by the real logistics of what it takes to actually be a filmmaker. You learn like what it's like to be a filmmaker on a day-to-day basis. There's 80% of directing is not actually directing, probably 90%. I was only on set for 4 weeks and I've worked on this movie for 3 years. So there's a lot of stuff that you kind of have to confront of like, okay, do I actually enjoy doing this? And then of course you get met with a lot of rejection. A lot of people just simply don't care. And you kind of have to, in many ways, you can kind of grow cynical and more pessimistic, and you can kind of lose your faith and your hope in what you believed from the start was possible. And so, in many ways, this movie and making this film, I wanted it to kind of be emblematic of the struggles I was facing with trying to make my first feature film. And I realized I was like, I don't want to make a movie for studios and execs and agents and managers so I can get outside validation. I want to make a movie that I would want to make if nobody was watching it and I was back 10 years old in my backyard. But now I have all these skill sets that I've picked up on how to actually do it for real. And so, yeah, in many ways, it was like Mia and Lucas are kind of both parts of me, and their romance is like the best part of me in many ways. And so while Mia is able to kind of reignite that spark by, connecting with Lucas, for me, it's like I'm reigniting my inner child in making this film.
That's cool, and that all makes so much sense. I mean, I think I could see how there would be parallels between what they're going through in their own field of like science and everything, and what you go through as a filmmaker. So very very interesting parallels there. I want to touch on themes and messages that you have to present in this movie, and how you tackle that. Because so I had watched Get It Together, which is an interesting movie that deals with COVID and restrictions and the precautions that were put in place during that time. And here in this movie, you have topics. Of course, climate change is a really big topic at the center of this movie, but also gender equality in the workplace is something that is a really prominent component to Mia's character. I mean, these are very relevant topics in American conversations. How do you decide how much of that you want incorporated into your stories, and how you approach writing that into them?
Wow, that's a good question because funny enough, I think a lot about it. And I think the reason why is, and the reason why I like that question is because it's kind of subtle. The
Mhm.
climate change bent, I'm not like swinging really hard on it. The fact that Mia's Latina, to me, is more kind of happenstance.
Mhm.
Like it's kind of mentioned in the beginning, um, where funny enough, actually in the beginning, her coworker jokingly calls her Mia Tortilla. I actually took that out of the script because people were like, that's racist. And then I put it back in because I was like, that's the point, And I was like scared of it. I was like, oh, I don't want anybody to think I'm racist or anything like that. And then I was like, wait, no, no, no. That's the point, is that like she naturally can't escape that's who she is, and in many ways, like, she kind of embraces it through the movie. But I don't know. For me, like, I wanted to just be there because the people who relate to Mia, whether they are Latina or are a woman and they've dealt with that in the workplace, they'll get it. They'll understand it. It'll hit hard and home for them. And then, people who don't get it, well, that's not my issue. But, same thing with climate change. I think if you really want to get educated about climate change, you can watch a lot of stuff that is a little bit more hard hitting. And I watch a lot of it because I care so much about the topic. But for me, I'm like, we can get so hung up on how many problems there are with the topic. And the same thing with, that the work dynamics of it all. And I think rather than focusing on the problems, because we know them, and once it's like one of those things, like, once you label the problem, once you figure out what it is, cool. Don't get hung up about the problem. Focus on the solutions. Let's figure out, okay, that solution doesn't work. That one, that one, that one. Cool, until you find one. And that, in many ways, Mia trying to figure out, like, who she is throughout her 20s, and, like, finding confidence. Confidence comes from experience. Confidence comes from trial and error of failing over and over again through, theories and through a bunch of hypotheses, I think is how you say it. And then hitting a theory, and a theory comes from a bunch of practices actually, giving you the results that you want. And so yeah, that was my whole mentality, is like, I just want to focus on the solutions behind all of this. And so even like with the work dynamic, that basically Mia finds confidence through herself when she starts to basically, like, she starts to talk before her mind can kind of keep up with her, which is how Lucas is all the time. He's literally talking before you can think. And she has moments where, like, Lucas is like, well, what do you think? Because she's smarter than him. And then she starts running, and then she stops herself because she's like, oh, wait, no, I don't want to come off as stupid. I don't want to look stupid. Am I overstepping? This is his thing. And there's probably also, again, the subconscious thing of, like, oh, he's the man, she's the woman, which, funny enough, for me, like, I didn't really even think about that in that moment. And that was the great thing, is Lucas goes, no, 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 keep going, go do it, and embrace yourself. Like, don't hide who you are. And I think, yeah, that's kind of the main journey for her, is having somebody see her talent and potential, when these bigwigs in LA don't see it. Like, who cares? And again, that goes back to, again, my own pursuit with film. It's like, I'm not a Latino, I am not a woman, but at the same time, I'm a human being who's dealt with similar situations of being overworked and undervalued and underappreciated and bullied all through workplaces. And how do you navigate that personally to kind of overcome it? And then, how do you also step away and say, you know what, why am I putting so much care into what this person thinks of me? I need to kind of look after myself while, still treating other people with kindness and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I appreciate how you tackle these topics and how you infuse them into your stories. And I think there's a level of enhancement that comes with the value of what we take away from these movies when you do it in the manner that you have. So I have to bring it to a close already. I feel like we're having such a good conversation, but
Yeah.
I do want to end on one last question, and that really is just, what does it mean to you to have Bolt from the Blue having its world premiere at the Austin Film Festival?
It's huge, honestly. When I got the call from the head programmer saying, hey, we'd love to have the world premiere here, I was like, oh my God, this is such an honor. And to be showing at the Stateside Theater, which is the biggest theater we could be showing at the festivals, is incredible. I'm so, so excited. And I think the biggest thing for me is not only do we have, like, cast and crew flying in for the premiere, but to be able to show the film to a bunch of peers of mine, of fellow writers and storytellers and filmmakers who are coming, especially at a crazy time in the industry as well. The fact that people can kind of come together and unite as one front, of storytellers is really exciting. So to have people checking out the movie that I respect and admire is, yeah, just a huge honor.
Well, Jack, it's been an honor talking with you about the film. I do want to congratulate you on having completed it, having its world premiere at the Austin Film Festival, and I really am wishing you and this film, the best going forward. And I can't wait to see what else you do in the future with your career.
Thank you so much, Thomas. I can't wait for you to see more of my projects.
Yeah.
There's a lot in the pipeline.